Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. It is good to be with you. Thanks for joining us. President Biden is set to visit New Orleans Friday in the wake of destruction from Hurricane Ida.
I'll be traveling to Louisiana to meet with Governor John Bel Edwards, as well as the parish presidents and mayors and the local officials representing the affected areas. Governor Edwards encouraged me to come and assured me that my visit will not disrupt recovery efforts on the ground. That's what I wanted to be sure of. My message to everyone affected is we're all in this together. The nation is here to help.
The deadly storm system slammed the Northeast Wednesday night, causing widespread flooding in New York and New Jersey. It also hit Pennsylvania and Maryland with significant force. It comes as the White House is working to focus on the president's domestic agenda, which is looking increasingly vulnerable. That's because West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, a centrist Democrat with a history of bucking his party, is calling for a strategic pause on Democrats' $3.5 trillion spending plan. Writing in the Wall Street Journal, Manchin said, quote, "Some in Congress have a strange belief there is an infinite supply of money to deal with any current or future crisis. I disagree." The domestic focus follows GOP backlash over the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. New polling shows President Biden's approval rating slipping to 43%, a 6-point drop from July. Congress is not in session, but that has not stopped Republicans from amplifying criticism of how the White House ended America's longest war. At-risk Afghans are starting to arrive on American soil. Plus, a major victory for anti-abortion activists. Overnight, the Supreme Court weighed in on a Texas law banning abortions after 6 weeks in a 5-4 shadow docket ruling. Justices decided not to block one of the strictest abortion laws in the nation. Texas's ban on abortions after 6 weeks before most know they're pregnant. That decision is sparking fears among pro-abortion rights advocates about the future of Roe v. Wade. For more, let's bring in Ed O'Keefe and Eugene Scott. Ed is CBS News senior White House and political correspondent, and Eugene is a national political reporter for the Washington Post. Welcome to both of you. Ed, let me start with you. What does Senator Manchin mean by a strategic pause in moving forward with the president's agenda?
Well, in part, he's saying, let's wait and see how the pandemic pans out. Let's see where inflation may or may not go. And let's just sort of try to take a deep breath and wait, because the argument he makes is, look, if for some reason this pandemic gets worse, if inflation runs off the charts, what are we to do then if we're about to spend $3.5 trillion? Do we spend trillions more? And so this is an argument he made first at a West Virginia Chamber of Commerce meeting earlier in the week, and now in the pages of the Wall Street Journal, essentially standing up and saying, let's stop here for a second. Let's push that bipartisan infrastructure bill through that has enough support in both chambers, get that to the president, and let's, slow walk the reconciliation plan. What he knows he's doing, however, is essentially sticking his finger in the mud or, slowing down a train that Democrats, most of them, desperately want to get passed and sent to the president because it's packed with so many of the party's priorities. But anybody who's surprised that he would consider doing this after spending a few weeks at home amid his constituents doesn't understand Joe Manchin, that this is what he does. He tries to slow things down. He tries to push his party back to the center. He tries to serve as what he believes to be a reasonable, moderating presence in the party and in the Senate to say, this is a pretty significant thing we're trying to do relatively quickly for its price tag. Why not just take more time? Obviously, and we've seen it already this afternoon, liberal Democrats, other Democrats quite concerned and upset about this. Nothing from the White House, nothing from Democratic leadership, but even some liberal groups are already saying, well, if that's what he wants to do, then let's just abolish the Senate, which should show you how seriously some of these groups are taking it. But again, with the Congress getting ready to come back after Labor Day, they've got a host of fiscal issues to deal with come September, before the end of the fiscal year. No surprise that he would try to throw up a roadblock like this and slow things down.
Well, Eugene, even if Senator Manchin were to support it, the next phase of the president's spending plan faces significant challenges. What are some of them?
Yeah, many of the criticisms coming from Senator Manchin are not unique to him. Real concerns about the widening view of what infrastructure is have been expressed, obviously, by other Republicans, but also some Democrats. And that is, focusing on issues related to health care and to education and certainly raising taxes. That issue right there has not been popular with Republicans in the Senate. And so the pushback that you're hearing from Manchin assumes that the bill would have had support from all Democrats, but it's not quite clear that that would have been the case when you focus on individuals, of course, like Kirsten Sinema from Arizona. And so the bill had some challenges even before this op-ed was published.
All right. Shifting gears here, Ed, you asked White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki about Texas's new abortion law earlier. Let's play some of that.
What advice would the president give to a woman in Texas right now who wants or needs to get an abortion?
What the president would convey to any woman who is trying to get an abortion, seek an abortion, be able to employ her constitutional right to seek health care and health care that is enshrined and allowed by federal law. What he would convey to them, I don't think he's going to be giving medical advice. That's not the role of any president. He would say, but I would say he would convey to them, I have asked my team to use every lever at their disposal to ensure you have this right.
So, Ed, this is not the first time the Biden administration has been at odds with the state of Texas, but what can they actually do about it?
Well, that's what's unclear. The president, in a statement earlier today, condemning what he believes to be a blatant violation of women's constitutional rights to an abortion, and said that he is asking the Justice and Health and Human Services departments to take a look at what might be the host of issues they could take up or things they could do from a federal perspective to preserve and protect a woman's constitutional right to an abortion. Some asked in the briefing, for example, would you consider providing transportation to women to leave the state and go somewhere else to get one? Are you concerned that other states are going to do this? What potential remedies are there to specifically address what Texas is doing? Part of the issue for the federal government is they can't be subject to a civil suit that might challenge this. They've got to essentially leave that to activists and others who disagree with the change in law to take into the legal system. So, what steps could the president take remains to be seen. We also asked when might we hear about what those federal options would be, and they wouldn't put a timetable on it. So you'll get a lot of, rhetoric denouncing this. You obviously have disagreements with this White House and the conservative-dominated Supreme Court. But what the Justice and Health and Human Services departments might opt to do, at least for now, remains unclear. Some have said, look, years ago, Dwight Eisenhower sent troops to Little Rock, Arkansas to deal with civil rights concerns. Kennedy sent U.S. Marshals to help people get to universities that weren't yet integrated. Why not send troops or U.S. Marshals to help women if they're trying to seek an abortion or to, transport them out of the state? Unclear if that's even on the table as something that could be considered, but certainly they're going to do it. And all of this comes, of course, amid the ongoing debate that underlies so much of what we're talking about these days, the push among Democrats, some of them, to change the rules of the Senate, to expand and change the scope of the Supreme Court. And all of that, of course, just sort of underlies this. The president has said he doesn't want to pack the court with more left-leaning justices, but obviously is awaiting some recommendations or some thoughts from a panel of legal experts that due to give him a report next month. And yet, we'll see what, if anything, the Justice and Health and Human Services departments opt to do.
And Eugene, at the same time, the Supreme Court is poised to take up Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban this fall, which will review the constitutionality of Roe v. Wade. What is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi proposing ahead of that?
Well, as you noted, this is not something that is unique to Texas, and that is what Democratic lawmakers, including the House Speaker, have warned for quite some time. And so we know that Pelosi this week has said that she wants to bring up a vote for legislation that would enshrine a woman's right to an abortion into federal law so that this would not be something that women in various states would be concerned with every few months. And so Whether or not she's going to be able to do that and when is unclear. Details about that legislation have not been made public. It's worth noting that while Democrats have a majority in the House, Democrats have consistently had challenges in the Senate getting very liberal policy moved forward, and this could present itself to be a problem for Speaker Pelosi there.
All right. Well, Ed, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell squashed some calls for the impeachment of President Biden. Let's listen.
If the president's not going to be removed from office, if the Democratic House, narrowly Democratic Senate, that's not going to happen. I think the way these behaviors get adjusted in this country is through the ballot box.
So, Ed, who is leading that charge and on what basis?
Among them, you've got Senators Josh Hawley and Marsha Blackburn of Missouri and Tennessee. You got a handful of House Republicans who are, if they're not calling for him to be impeached, they're calling on him to resign, or they're calling on the cabinet to use the 25th Amendment to remove him. This all in the wake of what transpired in Afghanistan in the past week. McConnell's point is, if you disagree with this, show up for the next election and send a message by electing Republicans instead of Democrats. And, you know, that's a statement that he and others have made in the past. But I think the calls that we saw almost immediately on last Thursday, in the hours after this attack from a small group of Republican lawmakers, just signals the real deep-rooted concern, criticism, you might call it hatred, at least deep disagreement with this president over anything, and the sort of real eager push, I think, to try to discredit him in whatever way possible. Republicans would turn around and say this is what Democrats did to Donald Trump from minute one that he was in office, so what we're doing isn't terribly different. The difference in this case, of course, is that they were doing it in a response to a national security decision. But to see McConnell say it's not going to happen, I think, is a signal that this isn't widespread, probably won't be, but is reflective of the continued divide in the Republican Party over a host of matters.
All right, we'll continue to watch it all. Ed O'Keefe and Eugene Scott, thank you very much.